In 1961, Carl Jung had a suppressed vision of a final 50-year countdown to a global catastrophe. Those 50 years ended in 2011. This video reveals the details of his final prophecy and why the world you are living in is already a ghost. This is not a story about a physical apocalypse. It is not about fire from the sky or the collapse of cities in a single cinematic moment. That is a comforting fantasy. The catastrophe Jung foresaw is infinitely more terrifying because it has already happened. It is an internal event, a psychological end, the end of humanity itself. For a century, we have been sold a sanitized version of Carl Jung. He is the wise old man of Zurich, the master of dreams, the balanced psychologist who offers a path to self-fulfillment. This image is a lie, a careful, deliberate, and necessary lie. The real Jung was not a therapist. He was a prophet, a magician who descended into the underworld of the Western psyche and returned with a message so stark, so devastating, that it had to be concealed. It had to be wrapped in the respectable language of science, hidden behind the mask of a clinical practitioner, because the world was not, and is not, ready to hear it. This is the work of uncovering that message, of looking directly at the prophecy that has been hidden in plain sight. It is about understanding that the clock has not just run down, it has already struck zero. To understand Jung's final warning, you must first understand the man who delivered it. And he was not one man, but two. Jung himself spoke of his two personalities. Personality number one was the public figure, the successful doctor, the empirical scientist, the man of his time. He was rational, sociable, concerned with the surfaces of life. This is the Jung everyone thinks they know. But personality number two was the other, the eternal one, the man who was at home in the past, who conversed with the dead, who knew that all of history was not a line of progress but a living, breathing reality inside him. This was the prophet, the mystic. This was the real Jung. His entire life was a battle between these two forces. The spirit of his time, demanding clarity, progress, and reason, and the spirit of the depths, which demanded a return to the sacred source of our being. Everything you find contradictory in Jung, his public denials of being a mystic, while his private life was steeped in magic. His insistence on being a scientist, while communicating in the language of a Gnostic, is the result of this war. He wasn't being dishonest. He was using the ancient prophetic art of concealment. He was hiding the sacred from the profane. He was speaking in a way that could only be understood by those with ears to hear, while allowing the rest to hang themselves with their own reasonable expectations. Because the most crucial function of a prophet is not to tell the future. It is to reveal the past, to expose the original crime for which an entire culture is still being punished. And the original crime of the West, the secret that Jung's entire life's work was meant to unveil, is that we murdered our own soul. We began this murder 2,500 years ago. It was Plato and his student Aristotle who, with their obsessive insistence on rational logic, declared war on the divine. They silenced the language of dreams, of visions, of the underworld. They took the living, breathing, sacred world of the first Greek prophets and mystics and turned it into a collection of abstract ideas. They replaced direct experience with theory. They taught us to argue about God instead of feeling his presence. This was the great severing, the moment our civilization turned its back on its own sacred source. Everything that has followed, our materialism, our spiritual emptiness, our relentless and insane march of progress, is the direct consequence of this ancient murder. We are a culture built on a corpse, and Jung was the man sent to conduct the autopsy. In the final months of his life, Jung was overwhelmed by visions. They were so disturbing that after his death, his family tried to erase them from his biography. They were concealed, downplayed, rationalized, but the details survived, passed on by his closest collaborator, Marie-Louise von Franz. He had a vision of the last 50 years of humanity, and he spoke of a final catastrophe being ahead. He drew a diagram of it for his daughter. These were not vague premonitions. They were specific. It was a countdown, a 50-year clock that started ticking in 1961, the year of his death. That clock reached zero in 2011. His followers, desperate for a sliver of hope, have clung to another vision he had in his final days. In this one, he saw enormous stretches of the earth devastated, but added, "Thank God it's not the whole planet." This has been interpreted as a reprieve, a sign that the destruction will be partial, that humanity will survive. But this is the final illusion, the last desperate attempt to soften the blow. In the logic of prophecy, the first vision is the last. The most terrible truth is the final truth. The seemingly hopeful postscript is just the frightened, human mind refusing to accept what it has been shown. So, what is the catastrophe? Look around you. It is not the event we are waiting for. It is the condition we are already in. The catastrophe is the hollowing out of what it means to be human. It's the robotic voice of a flight attendant, churning out standard statements she has made 100,000 times before. Her tone revealing that the humanity inside her is lost. It is the invention of automated phone menus, which force us to use the sacred divine gift of the human voice to talk to a machine. In that moment, an uncrossable line was crossed. Humanity is not a right. It is the finest, most delicate commodity imaginable. It must be cultivated, treasured, protected. Otherwise, it just slips away through our fingers. The haunting question is not whether humanity will end, but who is left to even know that it's gone. The catastrophe is that we have become animals in human bodies, patting ourselves on the back because we have 2 arms and 2 legs, and we have forgotten what it ever meant to be anything more. The end of humanity is the loss of the ability to even perceive that loss. We are ghosts, living inside the shell of a world that is already dead. The end of a civilization is not an explosion. It is a moment of absolute stillness. The energy that propelled it forward is exhausted. The momentum is spent. But just as a spinning wheel continues to turn for a few moments, after it has been switched off, we continue to rush around. We are running on the ghost-like residue of a movement that is already over. Like cartoon characters who have run off a cliff, we are sustained for a few brief, unreal moments by the force of our own unconscious habits, completely unaware that there is nothing beneath our feet. This is why all our solutions are a waste of time. Our frantic search for new spiritualities, our desperate political activism, our bright-eyed optimism about a great awakening. All of it is just the twitching of a corpse. It is part of the old momentum. It is the refusal to face the stillness, to admit that it is over. But in that stillness, something else is stirring, an undertow. The beginning of a new movement, rotating in the opposite direction. It has nothing to do with anything our minds are familiar with. It is so new we can only intuit it by going deep into the nothingness inside ourselves. The first step is to experience the ending, to die totally into the silence. This is the real work that Jung's entire message points to. Our only business now is not to build a new future, but to create a funeral pyre for the past, to provide a catafalque for our Western world. It's the time for learning our primordial instructions all over again, the time to turn around and face our ancestors, to dance for the dead. We have to honor the ending before a clean new beginning can ever take place. There is no need for hope. Hope is a lie we tell ourselves to avoid seeing what is right in front of us. There is only the impossible task to heal the wound with the lance that made it. The only way to find life is to go back through the wasteland of our history, back through the centuries of forgetting, to the primordial crime. The only real future is to return to the past. The only thing that's new is what's most ancient. Everything else is a bluff, a distraction, a waste of life. The point is to leave you stripped of everything, even of Jung, even of this message, because it is only by shedding everything, including ourselves, that we can sow the seeds of a future that will never belong to us.